Good morning, and thank you for joining me, Sangha, and my fantastic co host, Martin. This is a special episode to celebrate the International Women's Day. And this year's theme is innovation and technology. They are calling it Digit All for gender equality. And it completely is in line with TechCare's mission of innovation and technology in social care. And we all know social care is powered by 80% women. And we have three fantastic guests with us. Mindy Sawhney, co-founder of carestockroom.com. We have Debbie Harris, MD of Atumna. And we have Tarryn Gorre, CEO and founder of Kafoodle. Welcome, all of you.
I'm in awe of being the only man in the room right now. I've got to quickly go away from me and go to you, Mindy, instead. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself, how you ended up in social care, and perhaps also a bit about Care Stockroom already?
So how I ended up in social care is that actually my mum used to work in social care, first as a nurse and then as a social care worker. And I kind of grew up with that in that environment. So she never owned anything but just was, one of that army of women who provides care. And then a bit later on in life, I chaired a small group of care homes. And now I am really passionate about social care still, particularly the people aspects of social care. And I'm also at the same time interested in the connection to healthcare. So I also sit as a non-executive on an NHS trust, where I also chair the People and Leadership Committee, but try and advocate for better integration with social care. And Care Stockroom really kind of grew out of a board member on this group of care homes that I chaired. And I decided that we'd like to do something for social care because we felt that social care is kind of just one of those treasures. It's utterly ignored, but there is something deeply wonderful about social care. It says so much about us as people, I think, social care. It allows us to express the very, very best of what it is to be human. But social care gets a really, really crap deal. Just on everything, I think. Just like everything you look at, you just think that is just so rubbish, that needs fixing. But you can't boil the ocean, right? You have to start with some practical things. And so my colleague and I looked at a couple of things. And one of the things that we really felt was that social care is unusually fragmented. So it's lots of very, very, very small providers and lots of very, very small suppliers, and neither of whom find it very easy to find each other and to do business. So we set up the first marketplace to serve social care. Sort of like the Amazon meets Mumsnet meets Checkatrade for social care. That was the idea, right? So like kind of mash it all together. And so we launched a minimum viable product, so a kind of pilot phase. We ran that for a year. We've just closed it, so we can take all the learning of that and kind of build it into phase 2 of that project. So it's been a fantastic learning experience. And I ought to say that my background is I'm not a digital tech person at all, right? So when I'm described as a digital entrepreneur, my kids think it is hilarious because I actually can't turn on the TV. So they're like, "What are you doing? What? And you still can't make Apple TV work, Mum, right?" So I'm really not a technical person, but the process of launching this business, running this business, scaling this business has taught me a lot about tech. And it's something that I feel really passionate about. It's very democratizing for social care and really democratizing for women. I'll blabble on a bit more about that later, but I'll stop there.
Sounds really good, Mindy. And of course, I've had the pleasure of working with you on some things, and I find you very conceptually strong around digitalization in the Social Care Innovators Network. And yes, you're right. We're going to come back to you in a moment's time. But let's go to you, Debbie, someone I met some time ago now, maybe just before COVID, who set out to do, huge improvements to how to find a new care home if you're a self-funder. And it's obviously, just like Mindy described, heterogeneous and very difficult to do so. Tell us a bit more about you and your journey.
Yeah, sure, Morten. Thanks. So I started off. I was a stay-at-home mum looking after my kids when I had to find a care home for an aunt. Yeah, and like an awful lot of people in social care, it was personal experience. But I found a care home for my aunt. But I thought, I can't be the only person who's trying to do this and really, really struggling. So I set up my first website. Now, you've got to bear in mind, this is maybe 15 bit more years ago. I'd never sent an email. Nobody had a computer at home. But I thought, this website stuff might catch on. And so I set up this website, and I basically put all the information on it that I wished I'd had when I was looking for a care for my aunt. Anyway, that developed, and 2 companies later, that has morphed into Atumna and what it is today. I would agree with Mindy. I am not a tech person. My kids also cannot believe I cannot work out which blooming button you need to turn the telly on. Somebody just invent one button, please. But anyway, that's beside the point. But the way I approach everything with social care, which I agree with you, Mindy, and your comments about social care, it's the jewel in the crown of this country. It's the backbone of this country. Without it, we are really in trouble. So we're very, very care seeker led. Everything we do comes from that initial first thought of when I was looking for care, I was the care seeker, and I've just taken that forwards, and everything we do is driven by the needs of the care seeker, and we just feed that into the platform, whilst at the same time recognizing that the care seeker needs information never more so than post-COVID. Over 90% of care research is now being taking place online. That's where most people are doing the majority of their decision making. So you need as much information as possible online. So in order to encourage the providers to do that, to support our care seekers, we work with the providers as well. So it's very much 2 sides of the same coin. You have to support both sides in order to get the right result. That's where we are, but very passionate about it.
Very strong. I remember having the first time I met you, I was a bit intimidated because you were so strong. You knew exactly what you wanted to do with this, and that kind of determination. No. That's the same for all of you. Very determined. It's probably a characteristic of an entrepreneur. Even I heard someone say recently, I may have said this before, but an entrepreneur is characterized by seeing a problem and running straight towards it. And that goes for you as well, Tarryn. What kind of problem have you found out there in the world that you're trying to solve?
So my journey to social care is not dissimilar. Although I have to admit, Debbie, you were actually the second person I ever spoke to, which you probably do not remember. So I do second Morton on, and I think it was with your second company, and you actually gave me the courage to carry on, because my journey into social care came through my company first. So the company is Kafoodle, and as the name might suggest, it's all about food. And we started off in hospitality and restaurants. And basically my aunt, my great aunt, but she got admitted into hospital. And there were various complications with what she was and wasn't allowed to eat. And that was purely because of the surgery and the cancer. And I was just quite shocked at how hospital food works. A lot of respect for social care and the NHS, and now sit on the NHS Hospital Food Review Board. But I wanted to take the product that we used in restaurants to communicate to diners what was in the food into the social care and the hospital sector. And I think I ended up having an argument with someone in the hospital who turned out to be quite influential, which resulted in a Innovate UK grant to kind of expand our product into care homes and hospitals. So what I really wanted to do was give the food first approach. And the why I speak about you, Debbie, is I remember you did a talk at a conference that I was at right at the beginning. And you said there are 3 things people think about when they want to look at a care home. And I think one was the smell. I can't remember what the other third thing was, but the second thing you said was the most important thing was food. And it's how people choose care homes. And I think for me, it was matching people to food in a medical setting. Obviously, food allergens and nutrition is what Kafoodle do day in and day out. But I now have a 93-year-old father who's on ITSE level 4, and just getting the right information to him and to his carers and to his care home about what's right for him to eat is kind of what drives us and has kind of kept me in the social care environment. But I think it was very much, as you say, Morten, about we identified a problem in the way that nutrition and food, care homes are so stretched as it is. I mean, with budgets, and I'm not sure publicly the amount of money people can spend to basically feed people three meals and snacks every day, and then deal with different elements of dementia and medication and meal planning. And I won't go on and on about the food shortages that we're all experiencing, but care homes are also having it tenfold. And I think the idea of creating a digital solution, and I'll just touch on the Mindy and Debbie thing about not being technical. I'm an ex-chef, a nutritionist, so definitely not technical. Better with knives and computers. Not even that great with knives anymore, if I'm honest. But the idea behind it is that actually, I think when you look at some of the products in social care, and I won't mention names in this, but there's certain electronic care planning softwares and that where it's simple, where it's got to be a scalable solution that anyone can use. And I think that's why so many non-technical founders end up in this sector, because you're creating a product that is being used by everyone, and especially even by patients who are, quite often a really overcomplicated product is not what's needed. If it saves people time and money, it works quite well in the care sector and social care.
Absolutely. And, I just want to add in one thing there, that digital is mindset. It's not, some computer degree or some data science in there. It's all about mindset, how we use the tool to solve real life problems. And like what all three of you have said. And it's great to hear that, Debbie has already inspired Tarryn. Mindy was inspired by her mother to be in this sector. So there is a lot of inspiration that this sector brings through. I have one question for all three of you. Given that this sector is 80% powered by women, what do you think the future is with regards to technology and bringing this 80% women into a technology mindset or a digital mindset? What things should social care do?
Roll out Wi-Fi. Sorry, I know I shouldn't say that, but that would be a first thing about it. But sorry, I'll let the others go.
No, I think that is it's an easy thing to say, right? But that's absolutely the case, right? If you can't, in the NHS, we are attempting, oh my God, so painfully to digitise. And a lot of the issue, I mean, really, like the things are clunky, but a lot of the issues, you can't get a signal. Even in our head office, you can't get a signal. So, it sounds an easy thing to say, but that infrastructure really, really matters to everybody, but particularly women who are often find it more difficult to travel into metropolitan areas where there tends to be better infrastructure. So there is something about being able to reach out into the places where women are, because they don't follow often the same travel routes, the same, so I think it's really important to do that. I think the thing I would say is that I think there are two issues really. One is I think that in terms of enabling women to use it, as caregivers, as care receivers, and particularly as informal carers, because while the paid care sector is large and growing, it's dwarfed by informal care, and that is primarily given by women. So to enable that to happen, I think to make it as much like the consumer tech that they have. So your shopping experience, where do you shop? You shop at Amazon and Sainsbury's. So make it feel like that. And it's just that kind of make it familiar. Don't create a hurdle. Don't do cool bro stuff, right? Because that's not, it's about really making it feel familiar and not threatening, and not like they have to spend a lot of headspace learning your gadget, because women have got their heads full of so many other things, right? That's one thing. I think the second thing is, while women are 80% of the workforce in care and in health, 85% of registered managers are women, very, very few women are owners. So there is a real issue about how do we support women into ownership. As you move into ownership, I think that the incentive to digitize becomes stronger, because you understand the impact on your business as well as on the operation. So I think kind of that is a kind of twin engine really. And we need to do something about getting women into more capital ownership, I think, of care services.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts, Debbie, there?
Yes, agree with everything. I think it needs to be simple and effective. And that comes from the user experience and getting the user experience right. And I think there's an argument that says, all three of us are sitting here, no tech backgrounds, so they have to make it simple for us to use it. And I have arguments with my tech guys when they try to complicate stuff because they're telling me it's very clever. I don't want it clever. I want it to be effective, and I want everybody to be able to use it. And I also agree to use the familiar technology that's already out there. So we based Atumna, when we built it, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We thought, right, what's listing lots of different environments that everybody's familiar with? Well, it's Rightmove, isn't it? So we based it on Rightmove, and then we just added in the personalization of Airbnb. Bingo. So that is exactly what we've done.
I like how you're coming a lot into this with user experience being sort of the main angle into it. It's actually also that of Sequoia. I mean, obviously there's a huge need for complexity or of harnessing complexity in many different aspects of having a large system. And I bet you all experience this as well. But user experience is just such a key, isn't it?
Critical. Yeah. Otherwise it doesn't get used. I was reading a report the other day about the NHS has got lots of tech in it. It's just that nobody uses it. And if nobody's using it, then there's no point having it, is there? So it's got to be simple to use.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how do you bring in the voice of women while designing and developing those products, which in majority of the cases are being used by women and served to the women? Because if you look at the aging population as well, it's a little bit skewed towards women, and often we forget that. I have more questions, but Morten, is there something that you want to jump in here before I ask that little bit of tricky, difficult question?
No, I just wanted to actually comment on that also, because running a tech company like I do, and I have no tech background either, by the way, it's been hard to attract women in developer roles. So there's around 15 people working in development here, and only 2 of them are women, and that's just recently. And they don't come as, what can you say, the most hardcore data scientist engineer way. They come being health engineers. So they've actually just by prevalence and experience grown into being development, whereas they could just as easily have worked for the NHS procuring services or systems. But yeah, they've taken this route, and it does really work wonders in the team also, I'll say. Just the whole dynamics of the team changes with us now being, some percent women in the development team. So that, I don't know if what do you see in your development teams? Are you being as good as you are as being female founders?
My CTO is female.
Wow.
Really? My dev team are all men. I've been on a UX call this morning, and they were men. Yeah, it's actually frightening, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, our company is 80%. Yeah, our company is 80% female. I mean, we don't have a lot of staff, so that might be skewed.
But the front end of our company is, but not the dev side.
Interesting.
We are doing things a little different at Invicta IQ. So we have signed up to UN's gender equality agenda, which kind of makes us to relook at all our hiring and see, is there something that we could do differently to attract more women? So we're looking at, getting women from their universities, even if they're not completely tech savvy, and developing them into tech talents and assets. So it takes a little bit longer time to reach towards that perfect product, but we are okay with that, because I think that's needed. You have to balance both sides if you have to push the women agenda.
But what I'm afraid of is, if we don't, then obviously what we've heard about, and some will have read good books about this as well, or heard other podcasts about it, but is that inherent, invisible male bias that's of course growing straight into the product as well, and serving a predominantly female sector. in the workforce, it's slightly dangerous. So it's obviously something that we've thought about as well, and we need to do more with. But it's not something that I can say that we're not fully there yet.
Yeah, and I think somewhere the line is getting blurry as well. It's not that women and men, there are distinct or very well defined differences in how they look at a solution or how they experience a product. There will be a little bit of overlaps around, but I think more and more the world is moving towards a much more fuzzier definition of women, men as well. So we have to bring those aspects into the decisions as well.
I guess I'm not sure about that, actually. I would say I would challenge that a little bit, because I guess what I fear is that we're ending up in a default male world. So, the distinction seems less clear because actually we are so accepting, even as women, of the default male process.
Mm,
So I guess I'm less convinced. I mean, the optimist in me would love that to be true, but I am a little bit skeptical of that. But I think the other thing I would say is I think, particularly in social care, I think there is a double whammy, really, which is both gender and age. So the majority
mm,
of women working in this sector are in midlife and later. And I think the tech sector generally has a sort of, it's both a bit bro, you know, so it's quite male oriented, like going out and getting money for your venture, your digital venture. You are talking to young, white, middle-aged, public school educated men. And when you are like me, and I'm guessing many of us, I'm not white, I'm not a man, I'm not young, and I grew up in a single parent free school meal household. So you're kind of like, it is like these different worlds colliding. So I think there is something about being prepared to develop women later in life as well, and to
mm,
support them to bring the skills that they've already developed into the kind of a tech application. I think the other thing that's really super exciting is for women to stop being consumers of tech, but their own creators. So I think, in the digital world, there is increasingly, like, really amazingly exciting developments in low code and no code solutions. So you don't have to be a
mm,
technology programmer or a coder to make your own products. So in the last month, I've made 3 apps. I mean, I still can't turn on the TV, right? But I can make an app now. And that's not because I'm clever or I spent loads of time doing it. It's because the tools have developed so much that even a
mm,
total numpty like me can make an app. So I guess there's something very democratizing that's happening. So how
mm,
can we invite women in to do that and to support them to become their own makers?
mm. That's a very good point.
I think I know obviously International Women's Day theme, but I think what I'm quite excited about is I don't know if anyone's seen the NHS entrepreneurial program that's happening, because I think specifically in social care, I also think what is missing is on the ground entrepreneurs. So a lot of
Mm,
people are building products where they think there is a problem in social care without having experienced it firsthand. And I think that ties in with women, because we know that women are most of the workforce. If we empower them or buddy them up with other people, and not everything has to be tech. As you said, digital is a mindset. Um, but I think that's what I think would be really exciting about those females that are in social care, starting to look at how they can create efficiencies and create products that solve problems they handle every day. Because at the moment, there are a bunch of techies coming in to build stuff for social care who actually do not know what the on the ground problems are.
mm,
That's a really, really good point. And while we're in the crescendo of this whole thing, I want to really ask these 3 female founders, what have you experienced anything, any bias in your journey? You just briefly touched upon raising funds, or let's get some of those nasty stories out. What have you got to say that's gender biased? We need to focus in on that.
I want to focus on what isn't gender biased,
Yeah.
frankly. It would be quicker.
Sorry.
I can tell you a really quick story of I was raising funds for Care Stockroom version 1 from Minimum Viable Product, our pilot stage, and I went and spoke to somebody who used to run a Fortune 500 company, a man, And, we spent ages dancing, we're going to dance, like wasted loads of my time. In the end, he didn't. And he said to me, I just nearly fell off my chair. He said, the issue is, I like you, I like the product, but, you're into all this women empowerment stuff and, you're probably going to employ a woman CFO and then she's going to go and have a baby and then you'll be, and I was like, oh my, but this, I'm absolutely, I know, I felt like shooting him, let alone myself. And, it's just this, but he said it as if there was no, he had no awareness of what he was saying. He just thought it was like an obvious thing. And in a way, I was quite glad that he said it out loud, because even when they don't say it out loud, that is so often the kind of thing that is in their heads. But that's just one example. But I won't I won't carry on because there's too many.
No, I mean, I think, I funny enough, had the exact same thing with myself about, well, you'll have a child and then he will run the company. So I do second that, but I think it's interesting in social care. There's also quite a lot of ageism, as we touched on earlier, both ways. I'm not nearly as young as I was when I started this, but I think there's definitely a lot of ageism around. I think also being then a female entrepreneur and what life experience you had, which I didn't feel certain other founders might have been getting. But I think in general, and just speaking about someone who works in quite a lot of different verticals in the tech world and has also done other technologies, I think because there are so many women in social care, we have to give credit for the support and the collaboration that does involve. Because, if you want to be in fintech or you want to be in some of those other technological spaces, it is not that it's right, it is much worse. Whereas in the social care sector, I do think there are a lot of women, and I think that actually leads me on to the fact what I'm most optimistic about, and there's no offense to any of the men out there, women collaborate. Yeah. Women really speak to each other. And I think moving forward, what's going to really revolutionize the social care sector is the collaboration and the union of different products to better everyone, which is really exciting.
You're kind of crushing one of the myths or busting it, that I was actually thinking sometimes. I was thinking that women were the hardest critics of other women, especially if you were on the edge of being something that they weren't. So you're saying that's not the coincidence in social care. I'm happy to hear that.
Listen, you can't generalize. There's always going to be one. But I like to think social care, what did you say, Mindy? 80% female workforce. They want to succeed, and they want other people. There's not a lot of industries that have 80% of women in the workforce.
No. Absolutely.
In my experience, without question, women collaborate. We talk to each other. We follow up. We share. But just going back to your point about ageism, not only am I female, but I'm also grey, and I have purposely gone grey. I thought, bugger, bleaching my hair or doing what I did for 40 years or whatever it was. No, I've gone grey, and I'm proud of it. And
you look fabulous.
I'm quite glad, thanks, honey. I'm quite glad that you were slightly intimidated by me when I was blonde and you first met me, because believe me, I was very intimidated by you. Honestly, I remember that first call. Yeah, I know. So the fact that I came across confidently, I'm really glad that I did. But yeah, I've purposely gone grey, and I've just thought, life's too short. I'm not stuffing any mushrooms either.
That's good to hear.
One question for all of you. What is one thing your business did that you didn't expect?
Do you know what? It's something my husband keeps telling me, actually. My business has turned me into a leader, an entrepreneur, and I had no idea. I thought I was a number 2 in life. Up until about the age of 55, I thought I was a number 2. And it turns out I'm not. And I'm very proud to be a number 1, a grey number 1 at that. But I had no idea that that's what it was going to do. And for me, the most important thing about leading is that I take my entire team with me. And we have the most amazing group of people that work together. And and when I say I lead, that's actually not the right word, really, because we're like a well-oiled machine. We're like cogs and if one of us isn't there, we break. So it's all this, it's collaboration, and it's everybody supporting each other. But that's what my business has done for me.
Wow, that's great.
I would say sorry, Tarryn, go ahead.
Well, I suppose it's not what my business is, something my business did that I never thought we would, which, even though we're in allergen management, was actually save a life. Whereas
Wow.
I remember getting, rolled out in a care home, and because of the information from the carer to the kitchen, and the resident was avoiding a choking incident. And I think that was kind of, having that tangible was kind of one of those moments of, I'll get up out of bed again tomorrow and do it all again.
Nice.
So sorry, Mindy.
No, that's amazing. That is really amazing. That's really amazing. So it's such important. My son has an allergy, and it is really, really difficult to manage. The older he gets, the higher my level of anxiety is, and the higher his is, right? So it's very difficult to manage. I guess I wanted to say something a bit about what I think we got wrong. So, I remember working with a client years ago who said to me, he was like this really amazingly impressive guy, 6'6", like really charismatic, huge man. And I remember him booming into my ear, Mindy, the man who makes no mistakes makes nothing. And I really agree with that. And I think there is something about, particularly for women as leaders, to give yourself permission to be visible. We're making mistakes all the time. We all know that, right? But it can be shaming to do that so visibly, particularly when you are the leader and you don't hide behind that, right? You stuff it up, and then, that sits with you. So I guess I want to say something I think we got wrong. Lots went right, and it was fantastic, but there is something we got wrong, and that's we got distracted. And we got distracted by being cuddly rather than truly focusing on what is the main driver for care home and domiciliary care providers. So I think we just got distracted, and it's easy to do, right? We got distracted by the product, we got distracted by our brand values, got blah, 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 got distracted. When actually in the care sector, what matters absolutely the most, and it's unpalatable as it is cost. It's cost. And if you cannot deliver on price, you cannot deliver. And I think that we just got distracted from that core thing, which is how do we drive down price for care providers? And I think that it's easy to do that in any business, to get yourself distracted by non-essential stuff. And so I would just say there are some. It's important to be able to say you get things wrong as well, and to make it possible to have conversations with other leaders who are also making mistakes. And it's harder when you are to find a safe space in which to have that conversation. So I guess I want to offer anybody out there who is making mistakes as a leader, I'm up for a cup of tea, and let's have a chin wag about that, because it's hard to feel that and process it on your own.
You're on, Mindy.
Wow.
We've made so many mistakes. Can't believe it. Okay, it's been really interesting hearing your stories today. Having met you all before, I of course knew what you were up to, but the length and the drive that you've got and how you've built businesses that are so relevant to the social care sector has been really good to hear about today. Your barriers and the things that you've come across. That's just been, one good ride for a Saturday morning. Hope everyone who's listening can absolutely feel where you've come from and what you've been through. So thank you for today. Take care.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and share your favorite Take Care podcast with your friends and colleagues. Until we meet next week, take care.